Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining Surf Sessions edition number 2. Super excited today to be welcoming our friend and our partner, Jen Benda from AYR. Jen, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Anthony. I know we've been talking about this for a little while, so it's cool to finally, share some trade secrets, right? Isn't that what we're doing?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure everyone tuning in is very excited to hear from you. So thank goodness you'll be doing most of the talking today. Just a little bit of background to introduce Jen, and Jen, I'll let you maybe pick up on some of this, but I know you've had an amazing career before joining the cannabis industry 12 months or so ago, roles at very well-known brands and retailers like Dick's, Nike, Neiman Marcus, and beyond. So a lot of experience over the years that you have in fashion e-com and in retail and brand. And I know today at AYR, you're leading really a lot of the marketing across strategy, execution, optimization of everything online. So that includes web, mobile, and social media. So lots and lots of stuff there for you to do, and lots of responsibilities. So 11, 12 months in now, what above and beyond that have you learned? What above and beyond that are you doing right now?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And it is really interesting to join cannabis now. And so I guess what else is in my remit is the customer experience and like finally learning who our customer is, right? It's so, I guess, it's so obvious to say, hey, you got to focus on the marketing funnel and then you have to focus on the shopping funnel digitally and in the store. But really the additional and more strategic focus is learning who our customer is, and therefore being even better at marketing and the omni shopping experience so that it actually meets their needs, right? And I'm learning and, getting bruises along the way that's a lot harder to do in cannabis than it's been in my past life. So really hunkering down now and starting to get into that.
Well, like myself and like many others, we've come from other industries to join the cannabis industry. Can we get a sense from you of why cannabis? I mean, obviously there's some big challenges. There's a lot of unknowns. You're building things as you go. I'm sure they were part of the attraction, but it is some degree of risk for us all to jump into this unregulated, regulated world. So what was it about cannabis that attracted you? And is that still the stuff that's sort of keeping you excited?
Yeah. I didn't ever imagine a year, maybe 2 years ago, that I would be in cannabis. That's, cards on the table, definitely true. And it wasn't by intention, I don't think either. And so, as I have spent over 15 years just in, footwear and apparel and sporting goods and then fashion, it's all very well-established industries, right? And each of the organizations that I've been at has their own secret sauce and does stuff really well and innovates in really cool ways. But I think unless you're at Apple or other really big like tech first organizations, it's hard to be the first to market to like radically change a customer or the way that they do something or the way that they operate. But cannabis isn't there yet. And so when I was starting to have conversations in the cannabis space, I learned that like where the customer is at is just grateful to be able to access the product, whether for recreation, for adult use or for medicinal purposes, that they're willing to go through some painful hoops to get access to this product, right? And so my curiosity was so piqued as just an obsessive person over customer experience, both digitally and physically, like that can't be the case. Like I must be missing something here, right? And so I think it was my curiosity and I guess desire for being able to impact an industry maybe more than I could have in any other space is what was the initial motivator. And like you said, I'm here almost a year now. Like, is it still the motivator? Hell yes, it is. Because it's so hard to do some of this stuff, right? Like even just basic customer data. In some respects, it's as close to medical type of data as you can access because they are patients in many markets like Florida and Pennsylvania that like you can't just go through and analyze a customer spending habits when the data is more protected or it's less accessible and so then creating a frictionless shopping experience, that was the like coined term 10 years ago in retail. And cannabis doesn't even talk about that yet, right? We're just trying to like sell things, make sure the product's in stock, try to get into loyalty, all of those things. And so the challenges are so juicy. They're the same challenges retail had previously, but in this space, it's not there. So it's so incredibly inspiring. And then specific to AYR, I didn't realize the extent of what we call our Force for Good team. And so working through the expungements of cannabis related crimes that are, first time offenders that are in prison for that, all the way to like taking a stance on domestic violence and wanting to partner in our local communities. Really big established companies do those things, as well. And they definitely take a stance, but you'd argue in the cannabis space, like it's already complicated. It's already, in some cases, it's still taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And AYR Wellness just stepped forward and said, we don't care. This is really important to us. And we're going to actually try to enact change. So they put their money where their mouth is. And that to me is the secondary and probably more important motivator of what like keeps me super inspired here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't think of any other industry, certainly in my lifetime, where not only are you sort of building the infrastructure, the operations, the processes, the entire business is being built, but at the same time, you're going through this whole cultural, social, legal, political, whatever other label you want to put on it, movement and change. And I sometimes get so caught up in the former, I forget about the latter. And I think it's so important that you folks are doing that and investing in that side of things and supporting that side because it's a critical piece.
Yeah. Well, and I think we need to do that. We have a responsibility as being, at AYR, we're a house of brands. We actually grow and produce a lot of really high quality products that we sell in our own retail chain, but then we also sell in other cannabis dispensaries. So I feel like we have a responsibility to just do right by this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily stepping, too far deep one way or to the other into the political landscape. Like there's a lot and it's very complicated, but at the end of the day, we're humans and we should just do right by humans. So I feel just really grounded by that for sure.
Awesome. You mentioned the word impact when you were talking about your approach to AYR and wanting to go and make an impact, right? Obviously you've proven yourself in a more established industry of, call it traditional retail, fashion, and so forth. What impact do you think you've made? Are you happy with your impact so far? What impacts do you see in the future? And how does that tie in also to just overall what's worked for you that you brought in so far, what's working, and maybe some things you've had to develop on the fly?
Well, I would say this has never been a more humbling moment in my career because I came in, with my playbook of retail best practices and here's all the things that work in e-commerce. Joke's on me, they don't work in cannabis that easily. And so I think, starting with a level of super honesty, the things that I brought in were, aside from just tips and tricks that have worked in our past, but really it was this hypothesis around the customer shouldn't have this many like this many jumps to get through a purchase. And they should be treated just like any other customer because these customers or patients, they also shop at Target and Walmart and Best Buy and Dollar General, like their local grocery store. And by the way, all of those CX best practices are pretty consistent across all of them, right?
Yep.
Buy an item either digitally or in store, like you're met with promotions, you're met with as little steps as possible to get to the checkout moment. So I came in with this hypothesis of, I understand it's cannabis. And then when I learned how hard it was, that hypothesis hasn't changed. It's just really morphed into, okay, so what can we hack so that in the short term, we're starting to simplify the customer experience while we understand that the product is so regulated, it's highly complex. So the amount of really specific product data and attribution and compliance information and dosage levels, all of these things have to be a part of the shopping journey. Unlike you're buying toothpaste, like you're probably going to go with Colgate. Do you like this flavor or that? The choices are really vast. So we've really pivoted into like being a lot more scrappy and just focusing on simplifying the shopping journey, right? We need to make this a little bit more, not simple, but a little more common to them so that, you're driving to a product. We think the customer wants that. Let's help them buy it a little bit easier, right? That's, I would say, the core strategy and where we're at from a digital experience standpoint and the shopping funnel. And then really on the other side, like, how do you engage with customers? How do you acquire customers? We're having this conversation for a reason. I also thought it's got to be super easy to acquire new cannabis customers, right? Another joke's on me because you can't do traditional media tactics in cannabis. It's either illegal or you can't really say enough for it to be effective. And so when I joined and, you guys, Surfside was working in just one market for us in Massachusetts, we looked around the landscape, had a lot of conversations, and I was grateful for the partnership. So you guys could educate me on, look, these types of mediums aren't going to work, right? The spend's not there. Maybe this social channel doesn't make sense for you to, try to acquire new customers. And so I felt like we really sharpened our pencil from less how the customer shops and just more about right advertising medium to try to drive the highest value conversion for new customers, right? And so now that train, I feel like, has really been able to move. Then the third one is retention. And so that's like, again, really smart, automated, personalized campaigns that retail's now, 5-6 years into the making. We really have to start now at the beginning to say, well, what should our segments be? And then how often should we talk to them? That's just now starting to really come to life a little bit. So I think those are the three main areas of like shopping journey. I feel like we've made a lot of progress there. We've deployed some new websites. We also, for those who are in our markets, go download the AYR mobile app. If you're in Nevada, go download the dispensary mobile app. Like, I feel like in about a year, we've gotten some really big chunky things for customers to engage with us digitally. I think we've gotten those out the door, and now it's acquisition and retention, both digitally and in store, like sharpening the pencil and starting to come up with some, easy wins and easy tactics that we can deploy right now, right?
Yep. Well, you've done amazing work on removing some of that friction, I think, as well from the buyer journey, because it's still not as easy as buying a pair of socks on Amazon, probably, right? But it's significantly better. And I know out here in California, there's been a lot of hesitancy over the years, and you guys obviously not present here, but the online experience is so clunky, particularly through third-party marketplaces, that it just really turned off people from purchasing online. And I think reintroducing less friction-filled channels and abilities to make purchases online, especially maybe with changes to banking down the road, it's only going to enhance those things.
Yeah.
The other things you guys do have to do with all of this is the education piece as well, right? Which we're not going to get into today, but like you've also got this while you're fine-tuning all of these experiences and you're building all this infrastructure, you've still got to educate the consumer, because you talk about retention, which is huge, but we've got very fickle consumers who are out there not sure what they're looking for, not sure what to buy. There's so many brands, there's so many specials and discounts, awfully challenging for you, we know. And a lot of stuff we could probably cover in a whole other session at another time. Maybe we flip the script here a little bit, Jen, and talk about You've talked about some things you've worked on, some things that have been successful. What about on the other side of things? Any lessons learned, any hypotheses or technologies or strategies or anything that you thought, oh yeah, this is 100% going to work, and maybe didn't, or you had to make a major tweak to?
Yeah, I will say I learned painfully after joining and being in cannabis that the technology power that's needed to sell these highly complex products are just harder to build and harder to grow, right? And so, no pun intended, but I now see why the complexities in the technology exist. And so for us, it's not as simple as like, oh, I want to change the PDP, and so that should be super easy to do, right? It's really not. And so, the tech partners we have in this space have been great. We continue to do, co-development strategies with them, which I think we're finding successes in, but that doesn't flip overnight, right? It's highly complex. So for me, that's, probably some of the learning is in the complexities of it. I think the other thing, not that it hasn't, gone well, is that I mentioned it before, but the lack of really rich customer data, right? And so even to the fact that I think a lot of customer insights are much more anecdotal than they are data driven in cannabis. And, I talk to my peers at other organizations, and I think it's the same problem everywhere. Your local dispensary, they generally have an idea of who's shopping there, right? Especially if you're maybe in a smaller market or it's a smaller revenue store. Like the managers and the bud tenders, they kind of know the people who are coming in. They can share the anecdotal, oh yeah, we see more flower customers, or if we drop a new gummy, we're gonna see sales double that weekend, right? That's helpful. But when I, as a marketer, think of defining our segments so that we build rich marketing campaigns against them, that doesn't exist anywhere yet, right? And so that, I think, has been really hard and something we haven't been successful at yet. But at the same time, I'm grateful because our CEO and CFO are really supportive of investing in data, investing in the building blocks for this. So behind the scenes, we have a ton of work underway to not only learn our customers, but then start to define how they shop, why they shop, what they shop, and then creating the automation next, right? So, not going to spoil any secret sauce to my competitors, but we're in that investment in the hard building phase right now of it.
And is that, I assume that's not a one and done, right? I mean, you do that and then you continually, and I guess in your days at Nike and Dick's, you would have done this annually or continued to profile and understand the changing behaviors. And in this industry, it's going to change even more rapidly and more often than in a more established, I would think.
Totally. And I would say the way that big organizations segment their customers is very different today than it was even just 5 years ago, right? You would typically define your segments and then they live for like a year, maybe 2 years. They're in your marketing collateral. You're defining campaigns against them. But in today's world where technology and customer data is super rich and generally more accessible outside of cannabis, the way that you can actually say, we don't have to define a segment. We're going to define revenue or commercial related growth tactics. And then we will have our machine learning databases go and tell us who is it, what should we offer them, when should we offer them, whatever that offer is. And we will 2x revenue in the footwear category, for example, right? So it's less about, oh, this is the sneakerhead, how do we talk to them? And more about, we need to grow revenue 3% in whatever casual shoes, therefore, right? And then you have really smart applications that go and start building those audiences in real time. Yep. I cannot wait to get my hands on stuff like that for us, but in the building blocks, like at least getting to let's call it a crawl and walk in the next 6 months, and then, opening that up when we can.
Must be hard because I know you used the term OCD yourself earlier in the conversation, but being a perfectionist and want to get this stuff done and knowing it's such a long journey and, you know, to some degree, it is step by step. Certain things have to be done before you can move on. How is, how are you with that? Are you just, you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year plan and you're just, your milestones, you're executing against it, or does it keep you awake at night?
God, I wish it was the, former. No, it's much more fluid.
Mhm.
And I think cannabis, let's just call it the major MSOs, the multi-state operators here. I think those have gotten pretty shaken up over the last year to 18 months from what I'm learning. Many MSOs were either really heavy, cannabis operators that were state specific that, started to build partnerships across the states. And then that's how they were created. Others were from, more M&A strategy out of, financial institutions that then started to buy up licenses and like sort of just hope that the collaboration between all these different license holders would work. It doesn't almost matter the path. I think now these, the major MSOs are like, we need actual like financial experts, we need digital experts, we need marketing experts, agnostic of industry, so that we can like take the next step from a growth perspective operationally. And I share all that to say, that's obviously what AYR did. So there's a lot of really strategic, incredibly valuable people inside AYR, just like the rest of my competitors. But I think we all got, a nice big ego check when we came in to learn how hard it is. So the fluidity of planning and changing of priorities is not only critical, but it's welcomed across the leadership team here. And so, weekly, I feel like I'm meeting with my peers to say, hey, we learned something new today. It probably is going to take XYZ and shift it right versus left. Like there are some pretty radical changes in more the tactics level that come up often enough. But it's met with welcome, conversation. And for the most part, the alignment happens quickly. So keeps me up from time to time, all the time. But, at least it gives everyone like, everyone's in that same boat, I think. So it doesn't feel like we're struggling by any means over here. I actually just think I've never seen an organization make decisions and pivot as quickly as I have here at AYR. So that, is almost the ability to finally put yourself to sleep is because of that.
Yes. Well, sticking with the boat analogy, and I think I've even shared this one with you, but I always talk to my team about swimming with the river, swimming across the river, but don't try and swim against the river. I think that pertains to life, but certainly this industry, because you have to be flexible, you have to expect the unexpected. And it's interesting because we work with so many, companies in this space on the brand and retail side. We work with big MSOs like you, and a conversation, a call with you and your team is very different than I might have with, a smaller company. And
Yeah.
we all know that, some states are struggling more than others. And I was up even in Colorado last week and just having such different discussions with local operators in that market. And I would say overall, I know that's your home state. It's a super tough market, right? It's not the only one. But with you folks, you've got such a wide footprint that you've got the exciting stuff in the new states, the Ohios, everyone's like super excited. And then you've got, some legacy states and everything in between. So it's definitely a mixed bag out there.
Yeah.
As it relates to new states opening up, legislative change, the rescheduling, descheduling thing seems to have quietened down again recently. There was a lot of hoopla, I guess, a month or so ago again, and lots of chatter on social and so on and so forth. And then it seems to have gone away again a little bit. And but you've got Florida coming up, you've got Ohio, you've got, all these different scenarios in each state and potentially bigger rescheduling, banking, all those things. So, we don't want to go into the gory detail here necessarily, but like how do you view change that is coming, how that may affect what you're doing, your thinking, and so forth?
Yeah. Well, let me on like the rescheduling conversations and all of those things first, and then talk about the state level changes. So from a rescheduling perspective, I'm going to dance around the politics, right? That's not my expertise.
Let's
Not
dance.
my, yeah, we're going to dance around that. The thing that is most, I think, important about that is actually just the conversation and the customer impact, right? Because moving it from schedule 1 to schedule 3 opens up conversations, both medically and from a research side, that haven't been allowed to be had. So like, whether you agree with it or not, there's what feels like no harm that can be done, right? Just researching something doesn't necessarily mean anything other than just simply getting more data, right? Learning more, understanding it, and then evaluating the opportunity that's, this power plant can have. So that's like on the conversation side of the medical community, right? And then you take the customer community, which is, let's just call spade a spade. It's still fairly taboo, right? Cannabis, was that like, oh yeah, I smoke weed that I got from my buddy's buddy. That's certainly how it grew up in my world. Not to date myself, but that was totally it, right? And now it's like, actually, it's a fully regulated product that can be used for adult use or for medicinal purposes, depending on the market you're in. And it is treated well. And when it's grown properly and it has like the right level of even just like product development, right? It's an effective product, whether you look at it one way or another, right?
Yep.
And so the most valuable thing that I think comes out of this is just consumers now get to talk about it differently, right?
Yep.
It's not schedule 1. It's, I think, for people that are what they call canna curious, they don't have to feel so scared to like want to learn about it because it's not a schedule 1 drug anymore, right? So that to me, I think, is the more important part of the conversation to be had. And then it's like that also, as an operator, helps me. Like, I want to be able to educate consumers more. I want to be able to be a resource. And, we really believe in the power of our bud tenders. They're in the store. They're passionate about these products. Like, don't feel so scared to be able to walk into a store in New Jersey and say, hey, my buddies tried these gummies last weekend and they love them. I have no idea what this is. That's great. Like, let's have a conversation.
Mhm.
I think the rescheduling helps do that in a way that like slowly stigmatizes the product and like allows people to have their own journey. If this is not a journey that you don't want to go on and you don't see cannabis for you from an adult use perspective, don't do it. Don't use it. Don't have the conversation. That's totally fine. But if you do and you have questions, let's create a safe space that's like not full of judgment and just creates education that's like really welcoming and feels positive.
Mhm.
So, I know AYR is obviously involved in a lot of conversations. Those are so way above my pay grade. But that's how I feel about it personally, and just like the reason why I think it's important.
Well, they're less
Um,
exciting conversations than marketing conversations anyway, frankly. So, we'll do the fun marketing ones. I
that's my
love you.
side of all of this, right? Like, really important people are going to make, hopefully good decisions.
Yes.
But then, as I said, like, how does that then, how do we talk about that at the state level? Regulations change. It's moving from medicinal to adult use in Ohio. We're thrilled, right? Like, we're also a retailer. That's great growth, right? Call it what it is. So commercially, that's fantastic. We're learning day in and day out right now what the rules and regs are going to be.
Mhm.
So how much can we market? What can we talk about? Still figuring that out, but at least it opening up to adult use, it broadens our customer base. It gives us that education again, right?
Yep.
So it ties to moving it to schedule 3, when and how and all of those pieces. But for states to go adult use, the value there coming from a medicinal use state first is that it feels like they've sort of gotten the regulation, they've gotten the customer, and really core like operating model type bugs out of the way if they started in this medicinal only market, to then flipping to AU. It opens it and potentially creates additional jobs and access to health benefits and all these other things that are like again, it's really, if it's not your journey, don't make it be your journey. But if it is, this becomes incredibly more accessible, right?
Yep.
Um,
Well, we love when new states open up. That's for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, and I think to your point of there's other markets that didn't go medicinal first. They went, you know, I couldn't even probably come up with the right term, but without that sort of stepped-wise path into adult use, I think those markets are where you're learning, like, it's pretty chaotic still. How customers are engaged is really fluid. There's less, advertising restrictions, but then, some companies operate at different levels. So I would say, at least in AYR, as the MSO I have the pleasure of getting to work with, we're in all of the markets that are like well more established. They, have had a lot of work into them. And so it makes it clear on like what we can do and what we can't do. Doesn't mean I love it all the time as a marketer, but at least it means it's clear. And we do want to do right by adhering to the compliance and regulation within those markets. Like, we're not trying to, be shady or do anything outside of the box. So it also is like, great, here's the box, let's play in it and be super effective.
Well, I love your perspective on removing the taboo. I think was the word that you used. I forget, again, I'm in California. I forget. We had some friends here yesterday from Australia, and I was explaining to my friend's wife what we do at Surfside. And it was really funny, and I haven't heard this for so long, but it speaks to your point that it still exists. Her first thing she said, lovely, lovely human being. Australia, it's still, only medicinal and very minimal program. Her first thing she said was, "Isn't that a gateway drug to other drugs? How does that make you feel?" And I was like, we had a good discussion about it, and we got to a good place, but it was just a reminder that we are really in the environments we're in, where we are a result of. And I live in California, where the taboo is, it's been maybe never here in some parts of Los Angeles, right? But like, it was just funny that is still, maybe the norm globally, not, rather than the exception.
Think about it, right? There's actually a term called Cali sober, which means
Yes.
you enjoy cannabis, but you just don't drink alcohol, and like you're cleaning your system. So California is a whole different world.
I live in Venice Beach. That's the ground zero for the Cali sober. Trust me.
But like, imagine me telling my family and my parents, like, oh, I'm taking this really, huge leap in my career and I'm transitioning into a totally different industry. God love my parents. My dad's like, sorry, what are you doing? And it's like, I get it, right? We grew up in a much more, sheltered town, and that was just not something that happened. And so explaining like, yes, I am going to go into the cannabis industry. And he's like, don't you sell shoes? Like, what? So, the stigma is totally there. And I live in Pittsburgh now. I love it here. But even, the friend groups that we have, we're drinking wine on the weekend and we're having whiskey, and, being into the cannabis industry, there was maybe like 10% of people that were like, oh yeah, my aunt has her medicinal card for XYZ purposes. So I think maybe in our age group, people are becoming more open to it for sure. But it's not the norm yet, right? Like, it's not a totally welcome. There's still some sensitivities to it. And even though I live in a medicinal market, like, there's obviously, we do a lot of business in the adult use space as well. So, I'm enjoying, a little product from time to time when I'm in an adult use market. And, it is not an easy conversation sometimes, but one that, again, when it moves to Schedule 3 and like, it just becomes less, right? Like, I heard this comment from someone the other day. I was on a call with a vendor, and it was like, this is sort of the prohibition of our time. And I was like, holy shit, it totally is, right? Like, in the moment, you don't think about that day in and day out. But to your point, there's people all over the world that are like, how dare you? This is a terrible thing. And yet we're looking at it like, wait, no, people are dying on the streets from this product, like fentanyl and all these other products. Like, let's, agnostic of, again, your political side, So, if people are totally fine drinking a few bottles of wine, but they don't find cannabis to be necessarily accepted, that's the piece that should change, right?
I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, and I've heard that once or twice before, that analogy, and that's what makes it so fun and so challenging, right? All right, last question. Then we'll take some questions from the audience. If anyone wants to submit any questions, please send those in. I'll be happy to ask those within reason to Jen. Jen, just looking forward, I guess, to sort of wrap up the formal piece here, the look ahead for the next 12, 24 months. For you, for the business, areas of focus, areas of improvement, the big gaps, in your marketing goals, in your technology, and where you are now and what you're doing at AYR and cannabis, and then versus maybe where you would be in a fashion retail sense.
Yeah. Yeah. The next year to two, I would say we've put out some very aggressive digital goals, but feel confident against them, specifically because, like I said, we're doing a lot of that hard work right now, right? Really solving big customer journey gaps that we feel like have to get shored up, investing in our data so we know our customer. And then what that means is then it's like, great, let's, in the next period of time, we are going to launch a new loyalty program, one that is actually something that we feel drives the customer to want to shop at AYR versus just drives the customer to want to buy cannabis, right? And so we feel really passionate about it needs to be cohesive with our brand and like our retail promises to our customers and patients. And then how do we really leverage the app and maybe a new version of it that ties the digital customer experience online to offline, right? Target is one of my favorite apps that's in the market. It's been for a very long time as, a mother of a toddler. And then also just, I buy a lot on Amazon. So Target has done such a great job of like knowing what your needs are and proactively sending you communications via push that are like, hey, are you running out of diapers? Or, hey, your curbside order is ready. Tell us when you're on your way. Like they have such a vast digital comms platform that like gives the customer what they need before they even need it, right?
Yep.
So I really see the next year to two, once we then finally know our customer, is like, let's talk to them in a way more one-to-one way and in a way that becomes useful to them and not just like, hey, buy this thing at 30% off, right? But like, your order's ready. Hey, we had an issue with an item in your order. Either way, come in, we've got you. Let us maybe swap something out in advance or talk to, Robert, your bud tender, when you get here. Like getting into one-to-one conversations, getting into being a value add to our customers and not just like, oh, this was the closest dispensary, so that's where I go. Like really creating AYR as our destination and being in the local community and like adding value to them, right, is the goal next.
Well, speaking of local communities, and again, you've got such a massive footprint. How many dispensaries? It's over 100 right now.
It's close to,
Close to
yep.
100? Okay.
It's a really nice, what I would say Nevada being a little bit of the outlier in the Rocky Mountain region. Otherwise, it's like Midwest to East Coast for us.
Okay. So first question came in. It's an easy one. Which state is the state that you most enjoy doing your thing in right now across all the states you're working in?
That's like picking your favorite kid.
We've only got one so far, so.
I would say we actually test a lot in Florida, which would be opposite of probably my normal approach because Florida is our largest market. It's medicinal only, and we have the most stores there. So the complexities are really intense there. My first few months, we would take maybe some of our smaller markets or take a market that we could test at one store only and get enough data to learn from. But knowing that Florida is so critical for us, we've really taken the opposite strategy of like solve the hard problems first, right? And then make the adjustments into markets that look a little differently. So not, I wouldn't say it's a favorite because if any GM is listening, I have no favorites. I love every market we're in, but Florida is where we're really starting a lot of innovation first.
Well, Florida, I mean, it's game on down there between the MSOs. There's no doubt about that. It looks like legislation is going to change. And so, yeah, a lot of 22 million people, I think, in that state and under a million medical card holders. So I don't know how
Which
many of them are going to buy legal pot, but I would suggest, a lot more than 900,000.
we are hoping so as well.
Yes. Someone's asking about marketing technology. Is there anything maybe more on the horizon, I guess, is the angle of this question? That I know you touched on a few of the things you want to build and the functionality you want to achieve, like Target. I always use Amazon as the example, but they're probably all there or thereabouts now with this sort of stuff. Is there anything that is on the radar that's exciting from a technology standpoint that is particularly interesting?
So I won't talk about the technology providers themselves, but let's call it technology and innovation experiences that we're really focused on is personalized product recommendations and guided selling. And at the end of the day, they're sort of they all come down to the same thing. Recommend a product that a customer is more likely to buy, right? Simply stated. And then they show up in a couple different formats. So in past lives, you really study a customer that's more of a searcher. They have an idea of what they want, and they'll give you more explicit clues via search types and things that they click on, et cetera, to help guide their path. Whereas more of a browsing customer is going to look through some pages. They're maybe engaging with like really macro categories. So you haven't quite learned enough because they're giving you implicit insights to what they want, and maybe they don't even know it yet. So how do you recommend a product for those customers? Well, there's been technology investment in these for decades, right, in retail. But with the cannabis product space, those products are so specific and unlike anything I've ever seen. So those are like from our priority to really get into next. There's some great partners out in the space that have some cool products in both of those spaces that, we'll probably play with. E-commerce providers also do it. Like it's the typical, do you buy a third party? Do you use the solution that could be available to you, or do you build? It's the same conversations, whether you're at Nike or us. So same exploration, but the end result will really look like, hey, we should be offering product recommendations that are tailored and offering a guided selling moment that helps through Q&A and other types of two-way engagement to like narrow the field of what a consumer might be wanting, right? Or narrow the selection of what they want.
Well, I love the term guided, because it's easy to do in the dispensary, and building it digitally is exciting and challenging. Two more questions have come in, Jen, for you.
Yeah.
Next one is, has the taboo made it difficult to hire new employees, especially on the corporate side? Have you had to change the way you market, quote unquote, your openings?
Yeah. Yes and no. There have been challenges, I think, in the hiring process because there's your wish list of like a resume that you really want to see, right? But I'm not the cannabis expert, so maybe my resume wouldn't have looked that appealing to them without this industry really wanting to rapidly grow and change. So I would say I think the recruiting process is incredibly challenging. Our recruiters do a great job. The people that we meet and interview with are fabulous. For me personally, I've really tapped my own network. Because I don't come from cannabis, didn't feel like to be successful in digital, you need to be a cannabis expert or even a user in any way. So we've hired people that have never consumed the product and know very little about it, and they're fabulous, right? Probably on the brand and the creative side of marketing, you want people who understand the culture and understand the types a lot more. So I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth, because on digital, very data and performance driven, right? On the other side, it's much more subjective, even down to the product format types, right? Like if you are an oil customer, are you a gummies customer? Are you, do you buy flour? Do you actually consume via, So there's all those different pieces, and the consumers vary so much that I think marketing roles are the hardest to fill without a doubt. And for me, when I look at those types of profiles, like you want someone who's also a badass marketer, and cannabis is such a young industry. So it's like, how many people have 10 years of experience and also have cannabis experience? Like that's hard. So it's hard,
Yeah.
probably in digital, but in the marketing and brand side, it's really hard.
Yeah, look, I think there's just some types of roles where you're okay not being passionate about whatever you're most passionate about, whether it's the legislation, the criminality, the consumption, the medicinal, whatever it is. But there's some roles that you absolutely have to have the passion. I mean, I speak for my sales team. They're so well, our cannabis sales team, we have we sell into other markets, but they know their markets, they know everyone, they know what's going on, they know what's changing with legislation. They have a really tight gauge. But there's other roles at our company where that is not important at all. So, you don't want to be, I don't think, biased either way, frankly.
Yeah.
You got to get the right person for the right role at the end of the day. Okay, last question, and we will wrap because we're a couple of minutes over. When talking about customer segmentation, what are you trying to accomplish outside of what programs like, in this case, someone's mentioned Alpine IQ. There are obviously other solutions in that regard. So what are you trying to accomplish outside of what they can provide, and how can what you are trying to accomplish differ from those tools like Alpine?
Yeah. Yeah. So Alpine is our CRM. So just clarifying that. And they're, a great partner for us. There is just general, let's call it persona-based segmentation, right? You know, don't know if it was Nike's or whatever, but like you'd have your sneakerhead, you have your weekend runner, you've got your morning yoga mom, right? And these personified groups of individuals that share enough similar qualities that then you build really effective marketing campaigns against them, right? Sometimes their shopping patterns might look different, but they have enough of these shared qualities that you define as that persona group, right? What Alpine does, and they do a really nice job, is like purchase pattern and other types of behavioral based segments in real time. And for us, the vision is like all of this together, but amplified 10x, right? So getting to the place where, at Dick's, we did a lot of testing at this around personalized one-to-one engagement, offer a very unique promo at a very unique time with a very unique product in it. And it was based off a significant amount of data science and machine learning that then dropped that offer at the right time, right medium, right exact thing, right? That could be even as much to say, we think this consumer gets paid every other Friday, so we'll drop it Saturday morning with like a win back of buy now, get $20 back later because they love coupons, or like that highly enriched data. So other industries are really advanced in that, and we just need to start with the basics, which is what we're starting to use Alpine to do, which is, action-based or shopping behavior-based segmentation, but eventually really needing to get to that, like one-to-one highest, like the highest likely to convert, and the machine does all the hard work, right?
Yep. Yep. And of course, we use a lot of that data to go and build lookalikes, don't we? And go and find more people like that, which is always fun. Jen, we are out of time, but I wanted to thank you on behalf of Surfside and all the attendees. It's been an amazing journey so far with you. Lots to come, lots of challenges ahead. I also want to particularly thank you because I know you're off on maternity leave in a few weeks with number 2 on the way. So you have enormous amounts of work to do, I know, and lots of other stuff outside of work that occupies you. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your insights, really unique insights, coming in from all these other industries into this one. So hopefully everyone that's tuned in has learned a thing or two. We'll certainly share this recording and any notes with the group. Any parting words, Jen, before we wrap up for the day?
Well, no, thank you, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be on here. for anyone who needs a fabulous agency, I might know a guy who has a very charming accent that would always make time to talk to you. No, I appreciate the partnership. And you guys know I'm a huge fan of Surfside. You guys have been a tremendous partner for us. And frankly, an educational, you're never too busy to answer my dumb questions. And I really appreciate that as I keep trying to learn this very, very complicated industry. So thank you for having me. And thank you for just always being a good partner for me.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Jen. Thank you so much. And thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye now.
Yours.